All right, so for this game, it looks like we have a pretty standard in and out game. We have a bunch of these people. Some of them are going to volunteer. Some of them are not going to volunteer. And I guess that's pretty much that. The elements themselves, we have F, L, M, and then we've got R, S, T, V. And the rules. So the first rule says, if we have an R, then we have to have an M. So I guess we can say if R, then M, contraposed. Now for the record, you'll notice that there's a lot of conditional rules here, so there's a good chance that they're going to end up connecting. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of room here. We can say if we don't have an M, then we will not have an R. Next, if we have an M, then we have a T. So that's convenient. We already have an M on the board, so let's link this in. An M, in turn, requires T. So if we don't have a T, then we will not have an M. Next, we've got, if there's no S, then we must have a V. Now that doesn't interconnect with what we have on the board right now. So you know what? Let's take a moment. Let's skip this rule for just a second and come back to it momentarily. The fourth rule, if we don't have R, then we'll have to have L. Now R we already have on the board, so let's use that. If we don't have R, then we must have an L. Likewise, if we don't have an L, then we must have an R. Now between R and L, this creates an inclusive relationship, so we can reserve a placeholder on the inside for one of R or L. Next, if T volunteers, then we can't have an F and we can't have a V, and again, we've got a T on the board, let's use it. If there's a T, then you cannot have an F and you cannot have a V. Likewise, contraposed, if we have an F or a V, then we cannot have a T. Now this creates potentially two different exclusive relationships between T and F, and likewise T and V. And we can use either one to create a placeholder on the outside. We can say that one of T or F has to be out. You could have also done something like one of T, or alternatively F and V would have to be out. That actually would be okay too. But we can actually take another step here. And this is a bit more advanced, I guess you could say. But because we have other relationships going further back here, we can actually extract another exclusive relationship. So for example, T and F, fine, T kicks out F. But if you look at M, arguably M ultimately will kick out a V as well, wouldn't it? Or same thing as F, M would kick out the F. So we can say that between M and V, we actually have to have another one of the two out. So we can reserve a placeholder for one of M or V on the outside. The benefit of looking at it this way is that it kind of shows you that there's at least two spaces that have to be reserved on the outside. It's not just at least one, right? That it's not just T or alternatively F and V. No, we have to have at least two independent spaces reserved out, and that can be useful. Now, once you get into the game, you might use other exclusive relationships that you might notice. So R similarly kicks out F, R similarly kicks out V, and in certain situations, those other exclusive relationships might be more useful. But as a starting point, the fact that we have to have at least two out is still quite usable. Lastly, the rule that we skipped. If we don't have an S, then we must have a V. So we can now connect this into the V. We can say that if you don't have S, then you must have V. Likewise, if you don't have a V, then you must have an S. And this also creates an inclusive relationship for V and S. So we can say at least one of V or S, maybe even both, at least one of them would have to be in. So this is a pretty good start. We have all of the rules chained in. This is probably everything we're going to need. So let's take a look at the questions. So number 7 is our standard exclusion question. As usual, we go by the rules. First rule, if we have an R, we have to have an M. So going through the answers, B has an R with an M, so we're good. Answer choice D has an R without an M, so we can get rid of D, and E we're still okay with. Next, if you have an M, then you have to have a T. So answer choice B has an M without a T, which is not cool. Otherwise, we don't have any other M's, so we're still good. Next, if we don't have an S, then we have to have V. Now, A has an S, so it doesn't apply. C has an S, so it doesn't apply. E has an S, so it doesn't apply. So this doesn't do anything for us. Next, R does not. If we don't have R, then we have to have L. So A has no R, and it also doesn't have an L, so we can get rid of answer choice A. Answer choice C does not have an R, but it does have an L, so we're fine. And the same thing with E. Next, Lastly, if we have a T, we're supposed to get rid of F and V. So between C and E, C has a T, but there's no F and there's no V, so we're good. But E has T with V, that's not good. So the best answer here is answer choice C. And as usual, I guess we may as well plug it in. C gives us LST on the inside, which leaves us with F, M, then we've got R and V on the outside. So from there, let's take a look at the local questions. Question number 8. If V volunteers, well, if we have a V, I guess the question becomes, what does that tell us? What does that mean for us? So right away, having V in basically triggers all of this stuff. So that means that T will have to be out, M will have to be out, R will have to be out, L will have to be out. And then F and S are still kind of ambiguous. They could go either way. We don't really trigger either one of those. So to the question itself now, which of the following now could be true? F and R? Well, no, because R is out, so we can get rid of A. F and S, and actually maybe we don't really know what happens to F and S right now, right? The fact that V was in, that doesn't trigger the S, and if S was in, it wouldn't do anything. So that seems viable. Just in case, let's take a look at the rest. L and M are in, and no, because M is already out. L and T are in, and no, because T is already out. S and T are in, and no, because T is already out. So the best answer to question number 8 is answer choice B. Next, question number 9. If T is out, well, once again, let's see what we can do. If T is already out, well, essentially this guy right here would trigger everything downstream. So we can say that M is out, R is out, L is in. And F, V, and S we're not 100% sure about. These guys are still ambiguous. That said, though, we could say that between S and V, we still have an inclusive relationship. So at least one of S or V will still have to be in, perhaps even both. We're just not sure. So to the question itself, which of the following cannot be true? A, F volunteers, and I mean, F could go either way, so that could perhaps be true. L volunteers, and she does, so that certainly could be true. Answer choice C, R volunteers, and no, that cannot happen. R is definitely out. The best answer to question number 9 is C. Just in case, answer choice D, S is in, and that could potentially happen. Either one could be in, perhaps even both, and V, same thing. Either one could be in, perhaps even both. Next, question number 10. If we have an M, well, let's take a look. If M is in, what does that tell us? Well, right away, M triggers everything downstream here. So T would have to be in, F and V would have to be out, and S would have to be in. And then we're just left with L and R. And between L and R, we don't know what exactly happens, but there's an inclusive relationship there, which means that at least one of L or R would have to be in, perhaps even both. So to the question, which of the following now could happen? Answer choice A, F is in, and no, because F is definitely out. Next, L is in, and maybe L could be potentially in. We're not 100% on L, so let's keep answer choice B open. Next, V is in, and no, again, because V is certainly out. Next, S does not volunteer, and no, because S does. And answer choice E, T does not volunteer, same thing, T definitely does. So the only one that could be true here is answer choice B. Next, number 11. If F volunteers, well, once again, let's play this out. If we happen to have an F, well, F essentially triggers everything here downstream, right? So T is out, M is out, R is out, L is in, and the only thing we're not sure about are S and V, except again, between S and V, what we do know is that there is an inclusive relationship there. So one of S or V will have to be in, perhaps also both. So the question now asks what must be true. L is in. Actually, yeah, L does have to be in. That takes care of it. The best answer to question 11 is A. Just in case, though, we can take a look at the rest. S is in. That doesn't have to. It could, though. V does not. Same thing. It doesn't have to, but that could go either way. Answer choice D, exactly 3 volunteer. And that's not necessarily true. We could have 4, because over here we could have had both S and V. And exactly 4, that could happen, but it also doesn't have to happen, because we could just have one of S or V. So the only one that must be true here is answer choice A. Lastly, question 12. Which of the following is a pair of employees that at least one of which must be in? So if we're looking for two employees, at least one of which has to be in other words, we're looking for a pair of employees that could not both be out. And that's really what we're testing for. We're testing for, could they both be out? Let's see what we can do. Answer choice A, could F and T both be out? Now, historically, we haven't really seen it, but it's worth noting that between T and F, they have an exclusive relationship. And all that really says is that they can't both be in, so at least one of them has to be out, but they could perhaps both be out as well. Answer choice A, there doesn't seem to be any reason that you'd have to have one of them in. Answer choice B, could you have L and M both out? And again, we haven't seen it. Oh, but wait, we know that if L is out, then M would have to be in. So there we go. That creates an inclusive relationship. There's no way for L and M to both be out, because when one of them is out, it pushes the other guy in, which means in turn that at least one of them will have to be in. The best answer to question number 12 is B. L and M are a pair of employees that at least one must be in because they could not both be out. Just in case, let's take a look at the rest. Answer choice C, L and V. Now you'll notice that, well, if L is out, then V is out, so they could easily both be out. We don't have to have one of them in. Answer choice D, R and S. Now between R and S, I mean, if R is in, then S is in, or alternatively, if S is out, then R is out. So we could have had both of them out. We don't have to have one of them in. Answer choice E, S and T, and same kind of thing. Between S and T, if S is out, then T is out. They could have both been out, so we wouldn't have had to have had one of them in.